Welcome. The League of Women Voters for over 104 years has been empowering voters with nonpartisan election information. Thank you for turning to the League as you have your voice heard this election. I'm Catherine Perrone, and as a member of the League of Women Voters, I will be providing you with the basic information on what the state ballot issues will impact. We also will be providing additional resources for those who would like more in-depth analysis. The League of Women Voters has produced a ballot issues pocket guide and election resources postcard for you to use and share with your family and friends. Please follow along on your pocket guide and feel free to denote your decisions, yes or no, by each ballot measure and jot down any additional questions. If you have your Blue Book, the Colorado Legislative Council publication with you, please feel free to refer to it during this presentation. There will be 14 statewide ballot issues or measures for voters to review and cast their decisions on this 2024 general election. 7 placed on the ballot by lawmakers, and 7 by citizens. 7 offer a change to the state constitution, known as amendments. 5 offer a change to the state statute, propositions, and 2 have been referred to the voters as required by state law as they are changes to tax code. They're called questions. These questions do not change the text of the state law. The 2024 statewide ballot issues will be presented in the following order, which mirrors the Colorado Legislative Council Blue Book. The 7 amendments first, followed by the 2 questions, and finishing up with the 5 propositions. Keep in mind that on your ballot, the measures will appear without a title, only the amendment letter or number and the proposition letter or number. So it will be very helpful to have your materials available when completing your ballot. For purposes of this meeting, we'll be providing the basics on each of these issues. What if it passes? What if it fails? Why it's on the ballot? Fiscal impact, and additional resources. As we review this information, please keep in mind that voting yes means that you want this ballot issue to pass, and voting no means that you want this ballot issue to fail. Let's start with the amendments to the Colorado Constitution. Amendment G modifies property tax exemption for veterans with disabilities, placed on the ballot by the legislature, passes with 55% of the vote. What if it passes? It expands the number of veterans living with a disability who could qualify for a property tax exemption for a portion of the value of their primary residence. It expands to include veterans with a significant service-connected disability that makes them unable to work, what the VA classifies as having an individual unemployability status. What if it fails? Existing requirements to receive the homestead exemption remain in place, and it continues to be the only available to veterans whose disability is rated as 100% permanent and total. Why on the ballot? Homestead exemption is currently in the state's constitution and must go to the voters to be amended. It cannot be legislated. An estimated 3,700 veterans in Colorado who are not otherwise able to claim the homestead exemption would be eligible for the exemption in the property tax year of 2025. The homestead exemption reduces property taxes collected by counties and paid to local governments. The state reimburses the local governments for all revenue lost as the result of the exemption. So the fiscal impact, state spending increased by $1.8 million in the state budget year of 2025 through 2026, and similar amounts in future years. to reimburse local governments for lost property tax collections under the measure. So local government spending would be unchanged. In addition to the League of Women Voter materials, please refer to the booklet from the Legislative Council of the Colorado General Assembly, commonly known as the Blue Book. The purpose of the ballot information booklet is to provide voters with the text, title, and a fair and impartial analysis of each ballot issue. The analysis must include a summary, major arguments both for and against, a brief fiscal assessment of the measure. The analysis may also include any other information that will help voters understand the purpose and the effect of the measure. This booklet is mailed to every voting household in Colorado 1 month prior to the election. The League refers voters to this resource as we believe it to be reliable and easy to use. If any of your local ballot measures require a TABOR notice to be issued, that booklet is sent separately from your county clerk and recorder. The county clerk and recorders are responsible for publishing and mailing the required Taxpayers' Bill of Rights TABOR notices on a local tax change ballot issue. Check with your county clerk and recorder for further information. Additional resources for Amendment G can be found in the Blue Book. What is the current homestead exemption? Who qualifies for it under this measure? And how does the homestead exemption reduce a homeowner's property tax bill? If you want to know more about your current homestead exemptions and how to apply, please reach out to your local county treasurer's office. Amendment H, Judicial Discipline Procedures and Confidentiality, placed on the ballot by the legislature with only one no vote. It passes with 55% of the vote. What if it passes? It removes Colorado judges from having direct influence and oversight over the discipline of their colleague, creating an independent adjudicative board made up of citizens, lawyers, and judges to conduct judicial misconduct hearings and impose disciplinary actions. It also allows for more information to be shared earlier with the public. What if it fails? A select panel of judges will continue to conduct judicial misconduct hearings and recommend disciplinary actions. Cases remain confidential unless public sanctions are recommended at the end of the process. Why it's on the ballot? This amendment would change the Constitution provisions which require voter approval to become law. This proposal came about following an extensive reporting by the Colorado Springs Gazette in a string of scandals in the judicial branch. Those revelations led the Colorado legislature to push for a new way to handle judges accused of wrongdoing independent of the state Supreme Court. They passed 3 bipartisan bills that changed the disciplinary procedures and workplace culture, including this amendment. The fiscal impact: the measure will increase state costs by about $50,000 per year. This funding provides compensation and training to members of the newly created Judicial Discipline Board and the Rulemaking Committee. Additional resources: the Colorado Legislative Council Blue Book. You can find what is a judicial misconduct and discipline and how they're currently handled, and what changes does this make to the judicial discipline process. This measure is also recommended by the judicial branch. More information about the merit selection and evaluation process can be found at judicialperformance.colorado.gov. The judicial retention questions will also appear on your ballot. You will be asked to vote on judges for your county and all appellate courts. If you're not familiar with the merit selection system or how Colorado elects their judges, please take the time to learn more at judicialperformance.colorado.gov. In the meantime, please refer to the Blue Book to review the judicial performance evaluations to help determine your vote on whether to retain or not. Don't skip the judges. Be informed and vote. Amendment I, Constitutional Bail Exception for First-Degree Murder. It was placed on the ballot by the legislature by a wide margin, only 4 Dems and 1 Republican against it. It passes with 55% of the vote as it changes the Constitution. What if it passes? It'll restore the ability of judges to deny bail to a person charged with first-degree murder when certain criteria are met. It allows judges to deny bail to a person charged with first-degree murder. What if it fails? It requires judges to set bail for all persons charged with first-degree murder. Why is it on the ballot? This fixes an unintentional consequence of the Colorado's abolishment of the death penalty, as there is no longer an exception to the bail requirement for first-degree murder, and differing interpretations emerged on whether or not a judge must set bail in these cases. The Colorado legislators referred this amendment to amend the Constitution to allow judges to deny bail in first-degree murder cases when the proof is evident or the presumption is great that the person committed the crime. The fiscal impact, whether the criteria is determined for denying bail, may increase the workload under this measure. However, it will be minimal and not affect state or local spending. Additional resources for Amendment I can be found in the Colorado Legislative Council Blue Book. What is first-degree murder could be found on page 20. Amendment J, repealing the definition of marriage in the Constitution, was placed on the ballot by legislators with 1 Dem no vote and 8 Republican yes votes. A simple majority of voters to repeal a provision in the state constitution is needed because it takes out instead of adding in. What if it passes? 9 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage across all 50 states. By passing this amendment, the state's constitution obsolete language will be eliminated and be in line with the court rulings and the current federal law. What if it fails? Current language in the Colorado Constitution that defines a valid marriage as a union between one man and one woman will remain. Why on the ballot? This amendment addresses the future possibility of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning its previous rulings and reverting the legality of same-sex marriage to each state. Leaving the current definition of marriage in the state's constitution may jeopardize the ability of same-sex Coloradoans to marry. Fiscal impact? None. It conforms the Colorado Constitution to the current practice and rulings by the Colorado Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court. There are no additional resources on this amendment. Amendment K, modifying constitutional election deadlines. It was placed on the ballot by the legislature, and it passes with 55% of the vote. What if it passes? It makes deadlines 1 week earlier for citizens to submit signatures for initiatives and referendum petitions from 3 months before the election. It moves up when judges and justices must file their declaration of intent by 1 week to run for retention from at least 3 months before the election. And it moves up when the ballot issue official text and titles are published by the legislative research staff by 1 month, from at least 15 days before the election to 30 days earlier. What if it fails? It maintains current constitutional deadlines for the election filings and publication of ballot issues in newspapers. Why is it on the ballot? All amendments to the state constitution must go to the vote of the people. It will allow for more time to finalize the content of the ballots before printed and sent to voters, which they think will improve the ballot accuracy by inactive issues not appearing on the ballot. And it would also give voters more time to research and review the ballot issues. However, it does shorten the time to collect signatures and file petitions, which could make it more difficult for citizens seeking to change state laws. The fiscal impact: local governments may shift and reduce workload for county clerks and recorders. State government will not be impacted by associated costs. There are no additional resources for this amendment. Amendment 79, Constitutional Right to Abortion, placed on the ballot by a citizens' initiative, requires 55% of the vote to pass. What if it passes? It places the right of abortion in Colorado's Constitution and prohibits state and local governments from denying, impeding, or discriminating against exercising that right. It repeals the current ban on state and local funding for abortion services. What if it fails? The current Colorado statute would remain in effect. A pregnancy may be terminated at any time, and it maintains the authority of the state's legislature to determine the legality. And it would continue the ban on public funding. No government-provided state and local money could be used to pay for abortions. Why is it on the ballot? The Citizens Initiative takes the current policy a step further and places the right of abortion in the state constitution. Further decisions on funding abortion services would be made by the Colorado legislature and local governments. In current law, there are exceptions in federal and state law that allow Medicaid to pay for an abortion when the life of the pregnant woman is in danger or when the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest. The fiscal impact: at this time, no change in spending is estimated, as it will depend on future decisions by the state legislature and local governments. Additional resources for Amendment 79 can be found in the Blue Book. What is the legal history of abortion in Colorado and the United States? Find it here. Amendment 80, Constitutional Right to School Choice, placed on the ballot by the Citizens Initiative and requires 55% of the vote to pass. What if it passes? It creates a constitutional right to school choice, an equal opportunity for K through 12 children. It establishes a new constitutional definition of school choice to include neighborhood and charter schools, private schools, homeschools, open enrollment options, and future innovations in education. This measure results in no immediate change to the state law or the enrollment policies of local school districts. If it fails, it maintains the current system of school choice in state law, not in the state constitution, which allows parents to choose from many public school options or choose to educate their children in private or home schools. Why is it on the ballot? Citizens Initiative enshrines in the Constitution the right of parents to choose the type of education from kindergarten to 12th grade and limits the authority of the legislature, state, or local school boards to make changes. No fiscal impact is immediately felt on education-related spending by state or local school districts, but may increase their spending on legal fees and expenses and planning costs. Depending on how the measure is interpreted by the courts and the state legislature, the measure may change the allocation of state or local funding for education. There are no additional resources for this amendment. Proposition JJ, retain additional sports betting tax revenue, was placed on the ballot by the legislature. This referred measure cleared the legislature with a broad support. Only 2 Democrats and 1 Republican voted against it. This question does not change the text of state law. It needs to pass with a majority vote. If it passes, it allows the state to keep sports betting tax revenue above the amount previously approved by voters and uses this money for water projects rather than refunding it to casinos and sports betting operators. The additional money will be used for water conservation and protection projects. What if it fails? The state will pay refunds to casino and sports betting operators when the sports betting tax revenue is greater than the amount previously approved by voters. Why is it on the ballot? When voters approved sports betting 5 years ago, the state economists' tax revenue estimates were low, and they now believe that in the coming years, the current tax rate will bring in significantly more than originally estimated. Under TABOR, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, the state must get voter permission to retain that additional money. Voters have seen similar questions on the ballot in previous years around tobacco and cannabis taxes. The fiscal impact? Retaining this revenue is expected to eliminate refunds to casinos and licensed sports betting operators of approximately $3.79 million over the next 3 fiscal tax years. Retained tax revenue would be transferred to the Colorado Water Plan Implementation Cash Fund. This money would be spent on water projects as allocated by the state legislature and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Additional resources for this proposition can be found in the Colorado Legislative Council's Blue Book, where how is sports betting currently taxed and how will this tax revenue be used to pay for water projects? There's more information on the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights at our website, lwvcolorado.org/tabor. And then more information about the state-funded water projects can be found at the Colorado Water Plan website, which is cwcb.colorado.gov/Colorado-water-plan. Proposition KK, Firearms and Ammunition Excise Tax. Placed on the ballot by the legislature, this referred measure passed with only Democratic support. All the legislators, Republican and 2 Democrats, voted against it. This question does not change the text of state law, and it passes with a majority vote. What if it passes? It creates a new tax on firearm parts, and ammunition of 6.5%. and uses the revenue for crime victim services, mental health services for veterans and youth, and school safety programs. Firearm dealers, firearm manufacturers, and ammunition sellers are responsible for paying the new tax on their retail sales. The following are exempt: sellers with annual sales of less than $20,000, retail sales to law enforcement officers, law enforcement agencies, and active duty military members, along with private sales between individuals who are not firearm dealers, manufacturers, or ammunition vendors. What if it fails? The state's taxation of firearms and ammunition will not change. Currently, there is a federal excise tax on retail sales of firearms and ammunition. In Colorado, retail sales are subject to state and local taxes that apply to most goods. No excise tax is currently levied by Colorado state or local governments. Why is it on the ballot? The Constitution requires the vote approval of any new taxes in Colorado, and current sources of funding for programs in the measure are declining or will be unavailable in the future. The programs funded through this measure currently receive a combination of federal and state funds. Federal funding has been on the decline in recent years, and the COVID-19 relief funds are no longer available. School safety programs have received allocations of state funds in the past. The fiscal impact: the tax would be paid by gun dealers, manufacturers, and ammunition vendors, who would likely add the cost on to their products. Additional resources for this proposition can be found in the Blue Book: what firearm products are subject to the new tax, and distribution of firearms and ammunition tax revenue, along with a full fiscal impact on state and local governments. Find Taxpayer Bill of Rights Tabor information again at our website, lwvcolorado.org/Tabor. Proposition 127 prohibits bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. It was placed on the ballot by a citizens' initiative, and it passes with the majority vote. What if it passes? It ends the hunting season for mountain lions and bobcats in Colorado and bars the state from ever allowing lynx hunting. It prohibits intentionally killing, wounding, pursuing, entrapping, or discharging a deadly weapon at bobcats, lynx, and mountain lions in Colorado. And it establishes penalties for violations. Also, it allows certain scenarios for lawful killings. Big cats could still be killed by state and federal employees as part of the population management efforts or with state permission by ranchers to prevent livestock depredation. People who actually accidentally hit an animal with their car would not be penalized. It removes mountain lions from the definition of big game, making landowners ineligible for state reimbursement for any damage caused by a mountain lion. The current law, they are not reimbursed for bobcat or lynx damage. So what if it fails? It continues to allow hunting of bobcats and mountain lions as currently regulated, but the hunting of lynx would remain illegal under state and federal law. Lynx were reintroduced in Colorado in 1999 and are still considered endangered by the state. Why on the ballot? The citizens' initiative that claims that populations can naturally regulate themselves and restricts the ability of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, CPW, to issue licensing that is used to achieve the state's ecological objectives. While the measure uses the term trophy hunting, it bans all hunting, pursuing, or entrapping of bobcat, lynx, and mountain lions regardless of the intent. Fiscal impact. In total, this measure increases state expenditures. It would decrease state revenue to the CPW in result of eliminating or reducing hunting license sales, but it would decrease the state expenditures in CPW as a result of the decrease in game damage claims, but it would increase revenue from fines or civil penalties may occur and to cover the legal fees to create new rules and regulations. The Blue Book contains hunting regulations on page 40. Proposition 128. Parole eligibility of crimes of violence, placed on the ballot by Citizens Initiative, passes with a majority vote. What if it passes? It'll increase the amount of prison time a person convicted of a certain crime of violence must serve to 85% before becoming eligible for discretionary parole or earned time reductions. It makes a person convicted of third crime of violence ineligible for discretionary parole or earned time reductions. Crimes include murder, sexual assault, aggravated robbery, and serious cases of assault, kidnapping, arson, and burglary. The impact, the parole eligibility of a person who is incarcerated for these crimes committed on or after January 1st, 2025. What if it fails? A person convicted of certain crimes of violence is required to serve 75% of their sentence in prison before being eligible for discretionary parole minus earned time for progressing in personal, professional, or educational programs. Why is it on the ballot? Citizens' Initiative to Reduce Crime and Ensure Justice is Served. An estimated 220 individuals per year are sentenced to prison for crimes of violence and currently serve an average of about 23 years in prison, which will increase under this measure. Opponents claim there is no evidence that this measure will reduce crime. The fiscal impact? It increases state revenue in two ways. In the short term, it requires a one-time computer system update at the Department of Corrections for an estimated $12,000. Beginning in approximately 20 years, state spending will increase due to the measure's increase in the percentage of prison sentence that must be served. Actual cost will likely increase with inflation and depend on offenders' behavior and decisions by the State Board of Parole. Find out more in the Colorado Blue Book. What is parole and how does discretionary differ from mandatory? And crimes of violence sentencing. There's a comparison chart. Proposition 129, establishing veterinary professional associates, placed on the ballot by Citizens Initiative and passes with a majority vote. What if it passes? Well, it creates a new mid-level regulated profession of veterinary associate between a vet tech who has 2-year associate degree and a veterinarian who has 8 or more years of education. It's called a veterinary professional associate, VPA. A VPA would be people with master's degrees in veterinary care who could diagnose animals, perform routine surgeries, and order and perform tests and procedures under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian. What if it fails? It allows only veterinarians, veterinary technicians, and veterinary technician specialists to be regulated providers of veterinary care in Colorado. Why is it on the ballot? A citizens' initiative is backed by animal welfare groups concerned about the shortage of affordable veterinary care. And it's opposed by veterinary professionals who warn the training requirements are insufficient for the level of care a VPN would be allowed to offer. The fiscal impact? State board workload would increase to adopt rules, but spending is expected to be minimal. Once a population of VPNs exists, state spending would increase for oversight and enforcement, and state revenue would increase in equal amounts from registration fees charged to the associates. Additional resources for Proposition 129 can be found in the Blue Book. There's a comparison chart of veterinary professions, current versus new. Check it out. Proposition 130, funding for law enforcement, was placed on the ballot by the Citizens Initiative and passes with majority vote. What if it passes? It directs the state government to create a new fund of $350 million to the Colorado Department of Public Safety, the CDPS, to distribute to local law enforcement agencies, paying a new $1 million death benefit to survivors of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty, and funding grants to local and police sheriff departments to boost hiring and retention. What if it fails? The current levels of funding for law enforcement agencies will remain unchanged, and the families of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty will continue to receive existing benefits provided by the current law. Why is it on the ballot? A citizens' initiative to direct how the state legislature should allocate Colorado's existing budget without considering local public safety needs or the state's broader obligations. The current death benefits vary and are dependent on the officer's agency. This would guarantee compensation for all law enforcement officers killed while on duty in addition to any death and disability benefit provided through the officer's pension. The fiscal impact? It does not require the state to set aside the entire $350 million in a single year, but it does require the money to come from the Colorado existing budget, not new taxes. The spending allocations to local agencies, the grants, would be determined by the state legislature and the CDPS. The state's obligation to provide death benefits would continue indefinitely and will eventually require additional state expenditures in future years. There is no additional resources for this amendment. Proposition 131, establishing all candidate primary and ranked choice voting general election. As this measure is about something that may be new to most, we will take what if it passes first and then explain it out more before looking at what if it fails. This was placed on the ballot by Citizens Initiative and it passes with a majority vote. So what if it passes? It changes the way Coloradans vote in two significant ways. It creates an all-candidate vote for one primary election open to all voters by abolishing the current party primary and assembly system of candidate selection for federal and state offices. It does not apply to U.S. President, district attorneys, or local government office races. As all qualified candidates would be placed on the primary ballot, the four candidates who receive the most primary votes would advance to the general election regardless of party affiliation. Here is an example of what the ballot may look like. Ranked choice voting would be used for the general elections. Voters would rank as many or as few of the four candidates as they wish in order of preference. Please note that the actual ballot will look different depending on the future ballot's design, rules, and decisions by elected officials. This version of ranked choice voting is also known as instant runoff voting, as it eliminates the need for another election, a runoff, to determine the winner, saving voters time and reducing election costs. If there are two or fewer active candidates, the ranked voting tally is complete. The candidate with the highest number of votes is elected. Keep in mind, Proposition 131 cannot take effect until certain criteria are met. At least 12 municipalities that meet various demographic qualifications must use ranked choice voting, and the state must audit these elections and prepare a report before an election for state or federal offices using the change proposed in this measure could occur. Let's look if it fails. The existing primary election system and the current method of selecting candidates and counting votes at the general election would not change. Why is it on the ballot? Citizens' Initiative to conduct nonpartisan elections to create a more representative and functional government throughout the state. Would provide all candidates, regardless of political party affiliation, an equal opportunity to make the general election ballot. Opposition claim that it would give an unfair advantage to wealthier independent candidates and may cause confusion or mistrust of election outcomes for voters. The fiscal impact, state spending would increase, costs of hiring staff, software update, redesign ballots, voter outreach, and reimburse counties for election costs. The state revenue would increase if business filing fees are not covered by the state legislature, and local government would increase costs to conduct primary and general elections due to updates to ballots, voting systems, training voters, and staff. The state reimburses a portion of the county election costs. Additional resources for Proposition 131 can be found in the Blue Book. What is ranked choice voting and how does it work? How do ballots look? And how are they counted? There's one more ballot measure that may appear on your ballot. It's for the Regional Transportation District, RTD, Ballot Measure 7A. In addition to the 14 statewide ballot issues, many will have the RTD 7A ballot issue on their ballot. If you reside in one of the 8 counties, including all of Boulder, Broomfield, Denver, and Jefferson counties, part of Adams, Arapahoe, and Douglas counties, and a small portion of Weld, you will be asked to vote on this measure. It was placed on the ballot by the Regional Transportation District RTD Board. It passes with a majority vote. What if it passes? It will extend the current voter authorization for RTD to retain and spend all revenue without further voter approval. It does not raise the tax rate or impose a new tax. What if it fails? RTD will need to cut its sales tax rate or rebate the revenue in the future to citizens, as the previously voter authorized bonds issued to finance the construction of certain light rail lines from the year 1999 are scheduled to be paid off in November of 2024, so the previous voter authorization is set to expire. Why is it on the ballot? This measure was referred to voters by the RTD board, and under Tabor, Taxpayer Appeal of Rights, the RTD must get permission to hold onto additional monies beyond what was approved in 1999. The fiscal impact? We're not quite sure yet, but we believe that a Tabor notice will be mailed to your home. Watch for it to arrive approximately 1 month out from Election Day for the complete fiscal impact. Thank you for attending this LWV Voter Service presentation of the 2024 statewide ballot issues. For more information about the League or to find out where the League stands on these issues, please visit our website at lwvcolorado.org/WTLS. And for key election resources, please review our materials. Visit vote411.org to view side-by-side comparisons of the candidates on your ballot beginning October 1st, 2024. Thank you for turning to the League for your voting and election information.